Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So after the day gap between us airing our free-to-play video, we are now going to be able to pull another card, or we should be able to. The last card we pulled was Dracula, but before I pull a card and draft a deck around it, it is that time of the video again. We are so very close, and honestly, we may have hit 2,000 before this one airs, and if so, just leave a comment telling me that we're already there and that I can stop giving my spiel. But I am so excited because we are almost at that 2,000 subscriber mark, which is just phenomenal. When I started the channel just a couple of months ago, I never would have imagined that we would have had this much support and started building such an incredible community, and it blows my mind every day. And so thank you guys. If we are already there, let's go ahead and celebrate. If not, then we are almost there. We just need a couple more people to push it up over that edge. And so with that being said, we are going to start pulling some of our collector's reserves. We only have a few cards left to unlock. We are getting pretty close. So we have some good ones left in the queue. We have some not as great ones left. My top most anticipated pulls are going to be Mystique, Gambit, and Wong. Not necessarily in that order. Mystique and Wong are two that I really want to experiment and play around with. Gambit is great in certain decks. I think he would enhance our discard deck even further. Doc Ock would be pretty cool. Cerebro, I think, is going to be pretty cool to mess around with. Black Widow. We have a lot that we're excited about, but those are my top three. Okay, and so let's go ahead and start pulling. Let's hope for one of those. Is that a back? No, it's a variant. I thought it was another back-to-back, but as far as variants go, I'm okay with unlocking the 8-bit ones. I think they look pretty sleek. So let's go ahead and keep going. Oh, we got another new avatar. Do we want this one? Do we want Morbius? Or do we keep Mr. Sinister? I think for now we keep Mr. Sinister, but it is kind of cool that we have a new one. Okay, so let's pull a new one. Boosters, not great. Cerebro, we got the bro. And so, of course, Cerebro being a pretty unique card in that ongoing, your highest power cards get +2 power. So if you build a deck around all three power cards, then you drop this card, that is going to enhance them to 5. If you also have a blue Marvel that pushes all of your 3-cost cards up to 4, that makes them 6. You get some pretty cool usage out of Cerebro. Now, of course, this would be enhanced with a Mystique to be able to copy that ongoing ability, but maybe we can make it work anyways. I am excited to play around with this deck list. There's a lot of different variations, and since we have quite a few cards to kind of drag into that pool, I think it should be pretty decent. So we are going to go ahead and jump over into the deck build, and then we will be right back. Alright, so we did end up throwing together a deck list. We are going with Cerebro 3 or C3bro. And so the idea of this deck list is to have all of your cards reach a power level of 3 before Cerebro buffs, before Blue Marvel buffs, so that your Cerebro will hit all of your cards. And then ideally you will want to flood all of your lanes so that you can buff them all up and offer a good board presence in all 3 lanes. Now, the biggest downsides or the biggest detriments to a Cerebro type deck list are locations. So if you draw into Monster Island, you're going to have to leave. There's no way to overcome that 9 power token that gets generated if you go into a location that you're not able to change, which is why we have a few different cards that can change locations for different categories. If you're location limited, that really restricts the ability and the power level of Cerebro. And so, for example, the big house, you can't drop 4, 5, or 6 cost cards, would limit Cerebro a little bit, but we wouldn't be able to drop big cards like Shang-Chi or Blue Marvel in those locations. The one that would be worse is the one where you can't drop 1, 2, or 3 cost cards in that location. And so for that reason, Magic is a fantastic card in this deck list, as she's able to change that location, she's able to open it back up, and she extends the game, which you typically want to be able to drop a few more of your 3 power cards. And of course, this deck list would be better with Mystique, but she eludes us. We are in our bottom 9 cards now, and we still haven't been able to pull Mystique. So whenever we do, this list should get even better. And then with Cerebro, I've seen versions from a Cerebro 2, 3, 4, 5, and then even more recently a Cerebro 6, which is just insane. The creativity that you can get with Cerebro decks is just amazing. They don't all work incredibly well, because you do need to be able to limit the locations, but it is a very cool idea regardless. Okay, so running through this deck list, First up, we have our 1 cost cards in Hawkeye, which on reveal, if you play a card here next turn, it gets +2 power. So that will end up being a 3 power card. We have Blade. Typically, we're going to hold Blade until probably turn 7, but we're going to be able to cheat an extra 5 to 6 power if we have both our Cerebro and our Blue Marvel on the board, which can help swing locations. And then Zero. Zero is going to be pretty decent to drop early if we drop Zero and then a Blade, or Zero and then on our first turn, and then we have Domino, which is going to be able to be a target for that zeroed out ability because it won't impact her. With our 3 1-cost cards, we do want to add in Armor. Armor is going to protect them from being killmongered or something similar, so that we don't have to worry about that power level being removed. And then we briefly touched on Domino, but Domino will always be drawn on turn 2, and typically we don't like cards like Domino or Silver Surfer, those that are guaranteed into your hand early, because it disrupts your potential to draw some of your better combos that you're going to need later in the game. However, Domino works really well in this deck list in giving you a guaranteed second turn follow-up for Hawkeye, a target for your Zero, enabling you to push some power early. Then we have Scarlet Witch, who's here mainly as a way to change locations. Her on reveal ability, of course, being replace this location with a random new one. This one sometimes is going to cause us to lose the game just with the randomness of the effect, but we do need to be able to control the locations to be able to try to successfully pilot the Cerebro deck. And then we have Sentinel. Sentinel is going to be huge in making sure we can kind of fill up our curve, can continue to fill out slots by giving a reoccurring 3 power card that we can drop onto the board. Then we have our beautiful Cerebro, which has the ongoing ability, your highest power cards get +2. Then we have Cosmo. So if the opponent is running something like a Hella discard deck, we can plop a Cosmo into the Invisible Woman lane to completely restrict them from being able to discard the cards that they were planning on discarding. And then that would, of course, restrict their ability to resummon them. There are several decks that run and rely on reveal abilities, and if we can restrict those, we can get quite a bit of upside. We have Shang-Chi to try to take out any of the high rolls if we're seeing a large minion deck, something that drops an Infinite onto the board. Shang-Chi is going to be our only way to compete with that location by being able to remove those large minions. Then we have Magic as another way to change locations, and she extends the game by a turn. So if we drop this on 5, then we get an extra turn to drop cards. If we drop it on 6, we can kind of trick the opponent into dropping too many resources early, and then we can kind of adjust our strategy based on what they dropped. And then lastly, Blue Marvel. So Blue Marvel is a 4 power card that has the ongoing ability your other cards have +1. So that is going to bring up all of the power level of all of your other cards to 4, which will then still be able to be buffed up by Cerebro, ending in 6 power cards all across your board, which is a decent power level spread. It's not as big as a high roll of a Deadpool, but it is going to be a little bit more consistent because you can drop these at any time, and as long as you draw into your Cerebro and your Blue Marvel, then you're going to be able to get them to 6 power. That is the general idea and rundown of the deck list. I've been wanting to play around with Cerebro for a while. It's such a unique card and fun card to build around. It may not be the most competitive or the most consistent, but I think it's going to be fun to play nonetheless. And so we are going to jump into some Cerebro 3 games. Okay, so first up we have Davy Masta, and we have Monster Island, which is a tank. So we're going to donate the 1 cube to Davy Masta. Just unfortunate that the one location that we don't have a way to kind of counter from, and we get it for our first game. So unfortunate. Davy Masta, nothing personal. We're not trying to run from you. Okay, so next up we have Meiji, and we do have Magic here. So we're going to be able to change an unfavorable location. We're going to be able to extend the game. That way we could either drop Cerebro and Shang-Chi on our last turn, or we'd get an additional chance to drop Blue Marvel. We get a couple of cool ways to play. And so for our first turn, we dropped our Hawkeye, knowing that Domino was going to come into our hand for turn 2, so that we can trigger Hawkeye's on reveal ability here. That's going to make both of them 3 cost, and they have a collector here. So maybe a discard style deck, and if we can draw into Cosmo and drop it strategically whenever they drop their discard cards, maybe we can counter a big part or a big piece of their deck. And so we do have Scarlet Witch as well here. And we know that 4, 5, and 6 cost cards aren't going to be able to be played into the big house. Monster Metropolis is not going to be great for us because if one of our cards is the highest power card there, it's going to get +3, which is really, really difficult. But I also am afraid of Scarlet Witch because she has the ability to completely tank. She can turn this into a negative location. So I think we play cautious here. I don't want to accidentally tank our entire chance. And we do draw into Cosmo, but we need to get power onto the board because right now we only have 2 cards. Do we take the risk and run our Scarlet Witch here this turn? Because I don't think we drop our Cosmo just yet, unless they're maybe running a Falcon deck and they're going to drop 1 cost cards and then this here. So maybe we do. Maybe we just drop our Cosmo into the big house in case they're running a 1 cost and then Falcon, or maybe a 1 cost and then Beast. So they do Mysterio here, which isn't great. Ooh, and then the Beast, which is not going to be able to trigger. So we do get lucky on that read to be able to stop them from pulling their cards back in, because Beast on reveal would return the cards to their hand, so they could buff up their Angela further. So we know that that is not going to be a possibility for them anymore. And so then we're going to drop our magic into Monster Metropolis here. That is going to change that unfavorable lane. It's going to give us an additional turn to play. So if we draw into Blue Marvel, maybe we drop him on turn 6 and then a Shang-Chi and a Cerebro on 7, or maybe on 7 we do a Cerebro, Scarlet Witch into the Cosmo lane, because we don't have to worry about that changing that location to an unfavorable lane any longer. And then a Blade. We have some pretty decent potential upside here. And so they drop an Iron Man, which brings their power level there up to 6. So kind of scary, but we don't have a Blue Marvel. I think maybe what we do is we go ahead and show our hand a little bit. We drop our Cerebro probably into Washington, D.C., because with Iron Man there, I don't think we're going to be able to win that location. We're going to have to compete for these other 2, and I anticipate that this is the real Mysterio token, and then that this one is a fake so they can get the +3 power. So we can still do our Scarlet Witch here. We can do 0, but we want to drop him into a lane where his on reveal doesn't go off. So maybe we drop him here. That still leaves us a Blade if we draw into Blue Marvel next turn, so we could do Blue Marvel and Blade for turn 7 over here in this lane for a decent power push as well. I think that's our best play line, and then we just see what they play here. So they have Cable, that's going to buff up their Collector. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Moon Girl as well. So yeah, Washington, D.C. is going to be out. We just have to compete for these other 2, which I think is doable. Angela has limited range. This lane, I anticipate that we need to add 5. So I would anticipate we need to beat 11 right now. And so then we don't draw into anything great here. Do we drop all 3 of our cards? They have initiation, so if they drop like a Devil Dino here, we could sneak it out with a Shang-Chi, but if they drop a Devil Dino here, we don't have any way to counter it. Do we think they're going to drop something that is going to increase their power by 8? So it'd have to, I mean, if this is the real Mysterio token and we read it wrong, and they wanted to replay that Mysterio token later, then they may very well have the middle location. So maybe we do Blade over there just to add some buffer. If we lose by 5 in this lane, I'm going to be sad. Let's go ahead and try it. Dang, so but it is the Devil Dino. And it is going to be large enough that our Shang-Chi is going to be able to steal it away. It's going to be able to destroy it. Even if that is the real Mysterio, we win that lane with our other cards. Beautiful. I don't know why they dropped another resource into Washington, D.C., and it was that the real Mysterio was over here. So we got that call correct. Just absolutely beautiful. I don't know why they didn't drop their Sentinel in this lane. They wanted to trigger the on reveal ability to buff up their Devil Dino further. And if they had dropped it here, because of Cosmo, it wouldn't have sent that copy back into their hand. And so because of that, they dropped it here. We stole and snuck out their Devil Dino, ended up destroying that one, which won us the game. I mean, what a strange little deck. What a strange little deck, but fun nonetheless. Alright, so next up we have Pedro S99. The first location is Hellfire Club, which isn't terrible. It's not a terrible location for us. We're able to play enough cards. We only have 3 1-drop cards or 1-cost cards that would be restricted, one of which being Hawkeye. But we do know that we're going to get Domino here on turn 2 to play into this location, which will bump Hawkeye up to a 3 power card. And then we can kind of play from there depending on what we draw into. We do know that we have magic in hand this game, so we can change a location and extend the game if we decide we want to or if we need to. Drawing into something like maybe a Cosmo here or a Sentinel Scarlet Witch would be pretty good. Ooh, and we get some decent upside in that last location. With it being Sanctum Sanctorum, I think we go ahead and snap off of that. We will probably end up with a retreat here, but I don't think they're going to be able to push power over into that lane. And so we're going to try and capitalize while we can. Otherwise, we're just going to drop our Cerebro this turn. We don't really want to drop anything into this middle location until we can play our Magic or Scarlet Witch, so that we don't have the downside of that lane. So they do end up sticking it out. If we can draw into, so they have a collector. If we can draw into maybe our Cosmo, maybe we can stop if it's a discard, or we have our Shang-Chi, which is also a pretty good alternative. But we're not able to drop anything on turn 4, which feels really, really bad. With this deck list, you really do want to be dropping cards every single turn. And so maybe Domino's not great here. So they have a discard style deck as well. What have we done? What have we done? Why? Oh boy. So we are going to change this location. We know that their cards are pretty big here. They're starting to buff up their Apocalypse. Maybe we'll have a good target for our Shang-Chi, which will let us swing one of the other 2 lanes, ideally, but who knows? We may end up just tanking and not being able to sneak out one of these other lanes. I think if we have a location, the Angelo lane will probably be the one that we are the most likely to swing. Ooh, and so they cap it out. And so Hellcow's not going to be targetable. Oof, that's unfortunate. Hellcow's not targetable. Angelo will be, but that is the only one in this lane that we're going to be able to target. And so they are anticipating putting their Apocalypse into the Hellfire Club here. So knowing that, and knowing that we extended the game, do we start stacking our cards here? And so we don't want to drop Cosmo into this lane. We don't really want to drop Cosmo at all because 6 power, 6, 12, 24. I guess we could. So maybe we do this and then we drop Shang-Chi and 0 next turn, which will make it 6, 12, 24, and we'll take away a 9 power Angela. I think that's our best play here. We're going to be able to swing this location. They drop a massive powerhouse unit of Apocalypse, but they don't really have, that's their big play. That is their big push, and they're not going to be able to do anything afterwards. And so they snap back, really. They're feeling very, very confident, because even if we Shang-Chi this lane, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. So maybe we do something like a 0 here, and then just for giggles, we also throw in a 0'd out Scarlet Witch. But that makes me nervous because it should be 0'd out, right? There's nothing here that stops the honor availability. I want to be absolutely certain because I don't want to change this into a Monster Island. We get a 9 power card and then end up losing the game. I just don't want that to happen. Yeah, so this should win us the game. The Shang-Chi is going to destroy their Angela, which should bring them back down to a point. I don't think we have anything to worry about. I don't think we even had to play the Scarlet Witch there. The Scarlet Witch, because we're going to be able to swing Limbo, and they're not anticipating it. And then our 0 does come in. We do win both the middle and the right location. So we sneak away a win that we really had no business being in. And they got a little bit overconfident when they saw how much power they had and how little we were pushing with our cards. But when you can push a bunch of 6 power cards on the last turn, you can make some pretty cool things happen. So very, very fortunate. Very good game, Pedro. Very good game. All right, so next up we have Mate J. And I don't know that avatar is kind of standard. Some bots run it, some don't. So we don't know for sure. But what we do know is that we're going to be able to double trigger our Sentinel here if we want to eventually change it with Scarlet, which we can. The only card we can't play here is going to be our Hawkeye, because then he would go up to a 5 power card if we played a card there on the following turn. And so then it pulls in our Cerebro, so that gives them a little bit of information, but we were going to play it eventually anyways. So I'm okay with that. And they pull a Rocket Raccoon, which does not get the buff because we didn't technically play a card. And so we got a decent amount of upside from that. And so maybe we Scarlet Witch is so scary. I want to limit their ability to play and get the double on reveal, but at the same time, I'm really afraid of changing it into a negative location. There's so many, like Xandar would completely tank us. Wakanda Nemesis, completely tank us. Monster Island, have to run. Just so many locations that would end up just derailing our entire game. So maybe instead of changing it, we just drop a Cosmo here. And then we can drop our Blade behind it because he won't trigger anymore. I like that play line. We go first. So if they are anticipating doing another on reveal, it's not going to happen here. And so they do play a card. It's a strong guy. So it's not one that has an on reveal. It's an ongoing, which is unfortunate. And we're not going to be able to target that one with a Shang-Chi anymore. I'm thinking that we extend the game from Sakaar to give us another opportunity to draw into our blue Marvel. That's going to allow us to push quite a bit of extra power into their way, but it also makes them have an extra turn to trigger their strong guy buff. So maybe it turns out that we have to shy away from that lane. But if they capped it out here, then we have a pretty good idea. So maybe they're dumping the rest of their hand. This is going to be a Blade. No, an Ant-Man. Okay. So they're running a Swarm style deck. If we had a Killmonger, that would be beautiful. So we have Hawkeye here. I think we drop armor to protect this lane. We can go ahead and drop one of our Sentinels because we know that our best card is either going to be Shang-Chi or Blue Marvel to draw into here. And so that would, of course, end up being in the Savage Land or into Limbo. But Savage Land is the one that we have 2 spaces to play within. And so they end up snapping here. We know that probably, pretty likely, we are going to lose in Kamartaj. And maybe we should have held this armor for 1 turn, because we know that we're going to be able to play quite a few cards next turn. And it gives them a very specific amount of power that they have to beat here. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to win. If we draw into our Blue Marvel, that will push us up to 19. Maybe we can sneak out this location without the need of our Shang-Chi. Ooh, and if they are unable to dump the rest of their hand, then we may end up winning Kamartaj as well. I think we have a decent shot here. Do we snap back? Let's snap back at them. We have as decent a shot as we could imagine. And so after we play this card, we're going to be tied. And so it all comes down to a 7 power push in this lane, which actually may not be enough. If this is like a Chavez and they don't drop anything here, we win these 2. We have a decent shot. So they do flood the board. Let's see if we are able to outpower them in either the left or the right, or even the mid. So that is a more than 7 power play. We lose Savage Land. Let's see if we are able to outpower in Limbo and Kamartaj. No, they end up getting rid of all of their cards on the left-hand side. So we lose Savage Land by 1. We lose Limbo by 1. Just heartbreaking. Just absolutely heartbreaking. The 6 power here is what we would have tied this lane, but the 6 power pushed them up over. The 1 power so close, like so incredibly close. Mystique there would have pushed us over in almost all of the lanes to give us that advantage, I think. But still, so very, very close. Enjoy your 8 cubes, mate. Enjoy your 8 cubes. Alright, so next up we have ZMMQZ. The first location does not tank us, so that's a good sign. We have Cerebro in hand, we have Hawkeye, so we're going to be able to have a target for our domino play on turn 2 to buff up our Hawkeye. And then we get Nova Roma, so we draw an extra card here as well. So very, very nice. So far, so good with this game. Ideally, we're going to be able to get a big Cerebro going and just have a massive board presence, and maybe even have a good target with our Shang-Chi by the end of the game. Counter them with Cosmo, some good potential play lines here. Ooh, and so they drop a Psylocke to ramp into a turn 3 4-drop. Interesting. So if it's like a Mr. Negative, it could be pretty bad. If it's a Sandman, that's pretty bad too. I do want to either change or block on reveals from happening at this location. Probably I would rather change this location. But before we do that, while we still have it, I am going to capitalize and get 2 Cerebros out of it for as much upside as we can. I anticipate a Mr. Negative. That's the most common Psylocke. Other than that, maybe it's a oh, really? It's an Omega Red deck, huh? We don't have any great ways to block this, especially if it's like an Iron Man Claw Onslaught. I don't have any great ways to destroy these abilities because none would get up over 9 power. So we're just going to play it by ear instead. I think, do we start flooding the board? Do we do that this early? Because this would be a good lane for like a blue Marvel to duplicate. So I want to keep at least one space clear. I don't really care to have armor in more than one spot. Maybe we have armor here because I really don't anticipate them dropping anything incredibly large. I anticipate it being like, so this turn 4, so maybe this is now, what is the other 4-drop ongoing that's good? It's eluding me right now. Oh, it's a Sunspot. Interesting. And so Sentinel does cap out this location for us, which is unfortunate. They know exactly what they need to get in this lane to be ahead by 10. I'm just hoping that being ahead by 10 won't result in them being so far ahead that we can't win these other 2 lanes. Now, a blue Marvel would be incredible to get, but we have a 1 in 4 shot, or we have a 1 in 3 shot, and then we have a 1 in 3 shot of it being a magic. So maybe we just play 1 card here. We know that next turn, if we do draw into blue Marvel, we can drop him here, he'll duplicate. But if we don't and we draw into magic, we want a space to play magic in. So I think we play it safe. We are leaning towards hoping that we get magic, followed by blue Marvel on turn 7. So they use Electro here. Interesting. So Electro is going to give them 2 additional energy here, but they're only going to be able to play 1 card per turn. So very, very interesting. So we do get the magic here. And so now we have a 50-50 coin flip of if we draw into our blue Marvel or not. And then we know that either way, we're going to be able to cap out both of these locations with what will be 7 power cards. So pretty formidable, but if we can get an additional 2 on both of them, it's going to be even better. And so we're just going to drop magic into Nova. I'm guessing they needed that additional space in Tinker's Workshop, and Electro kind of maybe backfired a little bit when Sinister London sent it over there. But either way, we will take it. Cerebro wins are not the easiest to come by. Usually they're pretty high cube games. If you can kind of sneak and they don't know that you have the Cerebro buff, you can get some pretty good 8 cube wins, and you can kind of sneak them away. All right, so next up we have Fox. And we know that we're going to be able to change Clintar, so we don't mind playing in cards into that location off the bat. That way we can change it later and kind of come as a surprise most of the time. We don't have one of our 3 1-drop cards, or any of our 3 1-drop cards. But that's okay. We draw into Domino. We know we're going to have a turn 2 play, which I think we start by stacking into Washington, D.C. I don't think we play into Clintar just yet, but we know that we intend to change it at some point. Scarlet Witch is always scary. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that this game, probably more times than I can count, but it always is a little bit terrifying to play our Scarlet Witch. So I think what we're going to do is play our Cerebro this turn. We're going to capitalize on the fact that he's not going to flip. Next turn, we're going to be able to drop both 2 2-drops. Ooh, and maybe we don't have to use our Scarlet Witch at all. Good. So we can go ahead and stack cards in that location. but knowing that we have magic to extend the game next turn, and then we'll probably want to stack some cards into Lemuria. We're going to need a power push there. And as long as they don't Enchantress our Cerebro away, or Rogue it away, I guess, would be pretty bad as well, then we should be okay. So they have an Angel, a Jubilee to pull in additional cards. What you got? A Killmonger, which does end up killing their Angel that they just pulled in. And their Electro, we didn't have any 1-drop cards, thankfully, that got targeted by that. And so we are going to go ahead and go with the turn 5 extension. Or do we... We're going to get another full game eventually, I promise. Alright, so next up we have Feet Whisperer. And Mirror Dimension is going to become another location on turn 4, but I think we still play into it. Because we know that if one of these is a negative location, we can always try to change it before turn 4, before Mirror Dimension picks it up and absorbs it or changes into it. Ooh, and so the first card they drop is Ebony Maw. Interesting. And then the Biofreeze is going to push it over to the right, but they're not able to play cards in there anymore. So the Biofreeze is actually pretty good for them in that they can drop cards into this last location on turn 4. It's going to push this over. So maybe it's that we change this middle location before or on turn 4, on turn 3 or 4, so that the cards don't get shifted over. I think that's going to be a pretty good. Strategy overall. And we could drop Scarlet Witch this turn. We can drop Cerebro, but I want to kind of hold him for now, at least for the time being. And we know that as long as we drop more than one card into Atlantis, that we're not going to get that +5 power bonus. It's not going to ruin our Cerebro. Ooh, and so they passed. They snapped and then they passed. So what turn 4 could they have? Ooh, and I forgot about Atlantis being absorbed, or Mirror Dimension changing on turn 4 instead of after turn 4. So that could have been pretty bad had it changed into the Biofreeze. So we're going to go ahead and change that location this turn. And it looks like they were only dropping into 2 locations anyways. So maybe they're not going to be competing for Atlantis. And so we do draw into Clintar, which initially seems pretty bad, but we are going to have a way around it. We're going to be able to turn it into magic now, which will extend the game. They still are unable to play cards there. If they're only stacking resources into Atlantis and I guess Clintar as well, that gives us a pretty easy means to kind of calculate what we need and how we're going to be able to kind of come up over that power level. So as it is now, on turn 7, we know we want to drop a 3-cost card, and so that leaves us with 4 energy left. This is going to be perfect. What we can do is we can drop Blue Marvel this turn. That's going to get rid of that nasty +5 power bonus that we do not want. Next turn, we can do, or maybe we do Blue Marvel over here. Next turn we do Cerebro into Atlantis. Since we don't think they're going to invest resources into this lane, I would anticipate maybe this being like an onslaught on this turn or next, to kind of emphasize this bonus and this bonus, but I think we still can come up over it. We're going to be able to drop a Cerebro and then 2 cards here. I think these are probably going to be our most likely lanes to win or swing. And so let's go ahead and snap back. I think they're going to be able to get another 5 power. Aw. This is why I don't snap. I mean, it's 2 cubes. I will take it. I would have rather it been 8 cubes. But even though this deck list doesn't have a great win rate, because there's so many variables that can just tank your entire hand, or the entire match and cause you to retreat. So Xandar, Wakandan Embassy is awful because it buffs up all the cards in your hand and you can't change it. You can't then divert those unless you get lucky and have a Clintar as one of your locations. Then you can just like play them in there and just get lucky. But otherwise, there's several locations that cause you to retreat really, really quickly. And so this one probably doesn't have over a 50% win rate, but we are slowly climbing still. We get a lot of 8 cube victories as compared to the 1 and 2 cube losses whenever we have to retreat. So overall, I think this is a fun deck to play around with. With that last game out of the way, I really would have liked to continue trying and pressing for a full match to end the video, but we ended up playing so many matches and they all ended either shortly or for a low cube amount, and they just didn't feel like they were worth continuing to show over and over and over because it didn't showcase any of the different elements elements of the deck that hadn't already been covered in one of the other games. So with that last game out of the way, we are going to go ahead and end this video. Overall, Cerebro is very fun, but it is a deck of patience. You cannot go into this expecting to win every single game, whereas if you go into a game with an overpowered Dracula discard deck, you have the chance to win every single game. You can be competitive in just about every single game, regardless of locations. This deck is very location dependent. If you get a bad location, if you get Monster Island, if you get Wakandan Embassy, it's very hard to come back and up over that deficit. So it's very dependent on getting the right locations, and so you have to be patient. You have to retreat often, and so then whenever you don't retreat, you need to make it impactful. A lot of times your opponent will snap, not really being able to precisely place how much power you're going to push onto the board, and then you can sneak out a Cerebro, a Mystique, a Blue Marvel. Of course, we don't have Mystique, but you can sneak those onto the board, really elevate lanes that they thought they were going to win to sneak them away for high cube victories. So I don't think this is a incredibly high win rate deck, but I think it is very possible to gain cubes overall with the deck list, even if it's below 50%. If the games you're winning are 4 and 8 cube victories, and the games you're losing are 1 and 2 cubes, then overall you're still going to climb. And that's what's so great and unique about the Snap system, is that you don't have to have a 53, 55, 60% win rate deck to still be able to climb fairly consistently. But overall, I am going to go ahead and end the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and a comment down below. It helps me know that you're enjoying the content, and it helps the content get out to a wider audience so that they can view and enjoy it as well. And as always, thank you guys for just coming and enjoying the content, interacting with me. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And so with that, I am going to go ahead and end the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.